Welcome to Enlightened, the enlightened journey of life. I am your host, Jen Hamilton, and it is an honor to have you here. I am a conscious life coach and women's empowerment mentor, and I activate a potent level of self and soul inquiry with my clients, which initiates deep and lasting transformation in all areas of their lives. I am here for the full human experience, authentically and audaciously sharing my magic with the world. On this podcast, we're all about mastering life on the way to enlightenment. And as we are here having a human experience, we might as well embrace it all. We play in the space of what is real and tangible, just as much as we play in the space of esoteric and metaphysical. You'll be ignited by deep conversation, whether through my own personal musings, interviews with incredible thought leaders around the world, and everyday divine humans sharing their soulful stories. Thank you for being on this journey. Let's dive in. Hello, beautiful soul. Just to let you know that listener discretion is advised for this episode and to be mindful if there are kids around as it contains adult themes. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to another episode of the Enlightened podcast. I am your host, Jen Hamilton, and on the topic of this episode, I want to have a chat about what is spirituality. And when you really think about it, it is such a loaded question because I truly believe that spirituality is completely different for every single human on this planet. And not only is it different, but it's an invitation for it to be different for everybody. I truly believe that spirituality is everyone's sovereign right to perspective and belief in whatever way that shows up for them. I really want to have a talk into what my version of spirituality is and how I came into spirituality. And honestly, I truly believe that it is everybody's own version of their awareness and their isness. There is no measure for spirituality. And if someone is saying that they are more spiritual or someone else is less spiritual, then they've missed the point completely. I do believe that it can show up in your connection to self, to nature, to life, and whatever it is that genuinely lights you up from your own perspective. If it's not your own belief system, if it's not your version, then it might not even be real. So, my version of spirituality to me is going to be different to yours. And like I said, it is an invitation for you to decide what it is for you and how you find your version of it. The way I experience spirituality is not something that might align with you, or you might take pieces of what I say and be like, yeah, I totally get what Jen's on about here. I'm going to take on board some of those things and leave some other things behind. So from an early age, so from the age of 21, so we're going back 15 years, I thought I was stepping into spirituality by having psychic readings done for me and learning how to do meditation. I would go to a meditation circle every week. I would learn psychometry, which is being able to hold on to a piece of jewelry or car keys or something close to someone and read their energy through it. And so a lot of people assumed when I said that I was into this or into oracle cards that I was quite a spiritual person. And yes, these are divination tools that you can use. There are ways in which you can connect to your spirituality, definitely through meditation. But ultimately, as I've gotten older, I've realized that spirituality can be anything that you want it to be. And I truly believe the more that we talk about it, we're inviting people to make up their own minds about what it is for themselves, that there is no rule book on spirituality. And there absolutely shouldn't be, because I truly believe that we're all sovereign beings. I believe that we're here on earth as human beings having a spiritual experience, and we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So when I talk about my version of spirituality, it's definitely grown and evolved over the past 10, 15 years. And no doubt, as I go further and further on my journey of life, it's going to grow and evolve even more. So, my version of spirituality these days is having a connection to myself, is having an inner awareness of what my thoughts are, what my beliefs are, what I'm constantly choosing as opposed to just settling for. And this can be in any way that things show up in my life. So for example, if I don't create, healthy, strong boundaries in my life, then I am going to open space for people to be able to walk all over me. And so, or, abandon myself and give parts of myself away. So I was born into a Christian family. So my mum was Catholic and my dad was Baptist. Dad wasn't very practicing, but my mum went to church every week, and then by default, so did we. And I, went through my confirmation, communion, all of that, and that was my view essentially of spirituality, which was through the lens of religion. And I remember often thinking in church that some things just don't align with me here. And this was from a pretty young age when I was in primary school. I did enjoy parts of church. I was an altar server with some of my friends. So that was where we would go up and we would help out the priest on Sundays, whether, we had certain jobs getting things ready or holding books or whatever it was. I really just enjoyed being of service. And it's interesting because the school that I went to was on the same grounds as the church. And because the priest knew that I was an altar server, I used to get pulled out of school to altar serve at funerals during the day. Now, I was in primary school. I was in about grade 6, grade 7 here. So I was exposed to death and dying and funerals from a very early age. And every time I smell frankincense and charcoal in a chalice, it takes me right back. I have these incredible memories of not only just sort of witnessing grief and loss at funerals, but also the excitement of being able to get out of school and go and help out and not having to do the work that all of my classmates were doing. So, from an early age, I had the lens of the Catholic Church as my vision for what essentially spirituality was. And obviously, my mum's version of the world as well. So, she grew up in a very strict Catholic Italian family. My dad, not so much. So, he didn't really have much to say about that. But I was essentially indoctrinated through school, through the church to have certain beliefs. And it was when I got into my teen years, I started saying, look, this is not for me. I don't align with what the church is saying or teaching. Some of the things aren't making sense here, and I want to explore other things. I remember the first time I said to my mum that I didn't want to go to church for Christmas, and the fear that I held inside to even work up the courage to say that, as I truly believed I was letting her down, that I was letting God down, all of these beliefs that I had. It was really when I started noticing that there were, certain teachings or rules essentially that the church had that just didn't align with me. I felt that there was just more to life and more to myself, especially as a woman, especially as someone who genuinely wanted women's rights from such an early age. These things really meant a lot to me. And I was just like, hang on a second. This church thing does not align with me. And so when I started exploring meditation and not necessarily witchcraft, I wouldn't say I necessarily got into witchcraft at an early age, but I was aware of it. So I understood what spells were. I started learning a little bit more about runes, oracle and tarot cards, but never really dived into witchcraft as such. But then I started to hear that, witchcraft is very shunned by the Catholic Church or, Christianity as well. And I started leaning more towards I think I can be a bit of a rebel here. What if I just go completely the other way, and then what might happen there? I've always been someone that's pushed the envelope from an early age, and this was absolutely no different. So when I was going through my 20s, I really associated with being, I guess, the spiritual one of the group because I was into kind of the woo-woo things. Like I said, it wasn't really witchcraft. Some people, I think, probably assumed that it was witchcraft, but I didn't see it as that. I just sort of saw it as going, well, hang on a second. Tell me about this psychic stuff. What is this mediumship stuff? What is oracle cards? How can I get messages either, from the other side? And I had quite a few friends actually that were mediums, and it fascinated me. And then going into my mid 20s, I took a real interest in ghosts and going on ghost tours. And I remember going to Toowong Cemetery, which is I think it's the biggest cemetery in Brisbane, and doing a walk around at nighttime with some friends. And I remember hearing things. I remember seeing things. I remember my feet burning as I was walking through some areas. And I was like, this is cool. And I ended up becoming the weirdo of my friends group. And it wasn't till I started meeting people at, whether it was psychic fairs or, through my meditation circles that I was going to, I was like, hang on a second, I'm not the only one here. So I really started to develop different skills. I dabbled in mediumship for a little while, connecting, like I said, through psychometry. So I'd hold someone's piece of jewelry and I'd feel for any messages that came through and pass them on. And I always had really good feedback to say, yes, that's, that I'm really feeling that for me, or that's true. But I decided that I didn't trust myself enough to keep going with it. And who knows, maybe I'll pick it up again one day, but it's just not been in my field for a very long time for me to do personally. No doubt, I am very intuitive. I use my own intuition for myself and for my clients and for, I guess, sort of the general collective. I can feel certain things. I can understand things from a different perspective. I don't make it sort of too widely known. I mean, other than this episode of this podcast coming out of the spiritual closet. But I haven't really done anything to develop those skills. So who knows, that might sort of come down the track a little bit. It's definitely something that interests me. Mediumship, probably not so much. I don't feel as though I can communicate with dead people, even though I've had sort of some inklings come through, but I certainly haven't done anything to develop that side. And I do believe that we all have it within us, whether we choose to tap into it or not. And definitely psychically as well. I think we've all got the capability to tap into our psychic abilities and our intuition. And I think it's really played a part with how well we nourish our vessel, so our human suit. We can talk about the pineal gland. So the pineal gland, if I can get it out, is a little gland that sits inside of the brain and is connected to the third eye. And so there's a lot of things in this world that can really calcify that. And if we want to go into a little bit underground, a little bit woo-woo, it can be thought that there is always darkness at play in the world. So as much as we have light, we have dark. Now, remembering, I'm just going to go on a little tangent here, remembering that we have landed on Earth. Okay, so we have landed on a planet of polarity. So everything that we see through this human experience, we're going to experience polarity. We're going to experience light and dark, night and day, high and low, left and right, up and down. Everything has polarity. And so when we look at the amount of light that we get to experience through all of the things that bring us joy, happiness, gratitude, connection with the divine, whatever that looks like for you, I truly believe that there is darkness at play too. Now, I don't believe in a physical place of heaven and hell. I used to believe in it when I went to church, and I used to believe you go down for hell and up for heaven, and that there were certain things that you had to do to get into heaven. And that was definitely what I was fed. But I truly believe that that's not actually the case. I think it is all a complete state of mind. So, as much as I believe that there are incredible light workers on this planet doing the most beautiful things to raise the consciousness of the collective and those on this planet, I truly believe that there is also darkness at play as well. And it's not that it is, associated with hell or the devil. I believe it is a certain energy And when we look at things like the pineal gland, what we do know is that when we have an open pineal gland, and this can be activated through breath work, it can be activated with certain plant medicines, it can be activated by being in nature. There's many different ways in which you can activate the pineal gland. We can start to see things from a different perspective, and we can have a connection with ourselves, a deeper level with ourselves, perhaps with the other side, and also things beyond what our human eyes can see and what our human ears can hear. And I truly believe that there are forces at play that are trying to dumb down humanity, that they are trying to close everybody off to having these powers and ultimately make everyone a little bit robotic and machine-like and less human, almost trying to destroy the soul essentially, so that everyone just conforms and gets into line and does what they're told to do. Now, I don't really play in the field of connecting with any of this darkness. I sure as hell have awareness of it. And it's not something that I want to bring too much attention to either. And let me just say, I'm not all love and light. I'm all love and light and a little go fuck yourself at times. And I am all love and light, and I'm like, get deep into the shadow and the darkness within yourself. And I truly believe that when we face off with the darkness with ourselves, then we're okay with having the darkness at play on um, a massive level. If we connect with how we are on the micro level, we can connect how we are on the macro level. And so I truly believe that we encompass all of light and all of dark, and that there is no separation. And I believe that there are forces around us on this earth, and even from a metaphysical perspective, that are trying to dehumanize all of us and make us a little bit more machine-like and robotic. That can definitely be another conversation on another episode, because I'm sure that if you're interested in this kind of stuff, there's a lot of juice to bring to the table here. So when we have a look at, the ways in which we can, activate that pineal gland, like I said, we've got breath work, there's plant medicine, meditation. It could just even be, being with friends, going for a swim in a beautiful creek and a waterfall, just experiencing the sun on your skin, all of these things that just allow you to just be. And for me personally, I know that I am deeply connected to myself and something beyond me, which is my version of spirituality, when I have awareness. So when I'm, less caught up in the going and the doing and the ways in which we just essentially become human, and I'm just in my beingness, when I am just in my pure, beautiful, divine self, and nothing else is getting in the way. So even though we've landed on this planet, and yes, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, we still are here to have the human experience, and we still have systems to exist in as well. We still have to pay mortgages and pay rent and pay bills and get an education and, develop our minds. And yes, we have to do all of these things. But as long as we don't forget to be ourselves and experience the isness along the way. So the isness of life itself, of our humanness itself. And, one of my favorite quotes that I say to myself often is that I am, it is. And when I take my clients through a visualization, I always have them close down their eyes and come to center. And when we're at that direct center point where there is no dark and light, there is no positive or negative, we find this beautiful center space within, when nothing else in the world matters, where I am, it is, resides. So if someone says to me, who are you? I could say, I am Jen. I am a conscious life coach and women's empowerment mentor. I do this. And it's like, well, hang on, no, who are you? And I can continue answering these questions from my human perspective. because that is the labels in which we associate our humanness. Or I could just say I am, because it's encompassing of all of the things and really none of the things. Because at the end of the day, when we meet ourselves right in the center, everything matters and nothing matters. That's the way I see it. And the I am statement is the most powerful statement because it's saying that I am all of it and I am none of it. We're actually not giving it any power. It doesn't actually have polarity. Polarity and duality don't exist in the I am presence, which is in your essentially your center space. And the it is statement is it is perfect and it isn't perfect. It is right and it isn't right. It's wrong and it isn't wrong. So we come right to center where nothing exists. And for me, being able to tap into that space to truly experience it, to remove polarity, to remove duality and come to center, for me, that is spirituality. And how I get there is in the way that I show up every single day. As long as I come back to myself, and I have so many tools in my tool belt to come back to myself, but as long as I'm coming back, when I almost feel as though I've strayed essentially from myself, when I go and be human and I want to come back to essentially my spiritual self, which is my I am self, that is the beauty of my version of spirituality. So I have many, many tools in which I can get there. I can be constantly shown things in nature and in life around me that are going to remind me who I am beyond the conditioning of my human experience. And I have, when I sit and I drink beautiful cacao is something that reminds me, as soon as I sip it, as soon as I taste it, as soon as it starts to flow through my system, I'm like, that's right. That's who I am. I just am. And I have crystals all around me, and these crystals hold a beautiful charge. They hold energy and they release a frequency, and certain crystals can do certain things. And when you sit with a crystal, it's going to very likely, if you hold the intention of it, show you that you can come back to yourself, to that I am, it is statement. When we look at nature, nature provides everything that we need to see. And sometimes we just miss the signs. We completely miss the cues because we're so just caught up in our humanness. We're caught up in our jobs. We're caught up in all the things and the stuff that we have to do. And you know what? That's fine. And it's completely perfect because we are here to have the human experience. Ultimately, we're here to live life. And if we can integrate this essentially spiritual side of ourselves in with life, then I truly believe that is us living our humanness and our spirituality together. It's funny because I remember talking to a coach of mine a couple of years ago. And it was interesting because I've worked with quite a number of different plant medicines that have really, really supported me on my journey of life and my spiritual journey. And I remember she asked me, she said, do you think that you can embody and stay embodied at the person that you are during ceremony when you're working with these medicines? Can you be like that throughout your whole entire life? And I thought about it and I said, well, no, because life gets in the way. And she called me out on it and she said, why don't you? Why can't you? And I said, because I feel like I lose myself every time, I come out of a plant medicine ceremony and I have to come back into life, then life gets in the way. And I truly believe that we can do all of these incredible things to understand ourselves on different levels. For me, working with plant medicine has been an incredible journey over the last couple of years to understand myself on such a deeper level, to understand life from my perspective, understand the world from my perspective. And it's given me the opportunity to just see things and feel things from a space that I truly believe that I couldn't get into from my humanness, that I needed the support of these incredible master teacher plants that we have access to ultimately bring me home to myself. And I worked with a medicine man years ago who said to me, Jen, the plants are us from the future calling us home to ourselves. And if you've ever worked with plant medicine, perhaps that will resonate with you. And if you haven't worked with plant medicine, then that's okay. And if you're called to, then it's a beautiful way in which you can connect with yourself and connect with life. And if it doesn't call to you, that's okay too. My star sign is Virgo and my element is earth. So for me personally, I find working with the elements that the earth has to provide is ways in which that I can connect to myself. And it's interesting because my partner, Dave, he is a Cancerian. So his element is water. And it's interesting because he has his downloads and his connection to himself whenever we go to the beach. Whenever he's in the ocean, that's him feeling like he is home. If you're a fire sign, you might find that breath work brings you home as it creates heat in your body. Perhaps if you're an air symbol or an air element, you might find that being up high or being in the wind might connect you home to yourself, or working with your breath in different ways might be the thing that brings you home. I've got a beautiful friend of mine who is a breathwork facilitator, and she has her awakenings through breathwork, and I have mine through plant medicine. And it's interesting because there's so many beautiful ways that nature provides us opportunities to connect and come home. And I'm not talking about any synthetic stuff as well. I've definitely had realizations and things that I've understood from synthetic drugs when I was a lot younger and partying in my teen years. They're just not even on my radar in my field anymore. I would much rather work with something that's come, with intention and lovingly had in ceremony with something from the earth, where I honor the custodians of the land, where I honor all of the beautiful humans that have created the process in which these beautiful plant medicines can get to us. And you might find, like I said, that breath work is something that opens you up to have a look into things even further. Or perhaps it's just going for a walk in nature. Perhaps it's having a conversation with someone. There's been plenty of times that I've had conversations with people where we've literally just been talking about anything, and they've had a realization, something's dropped in. Perhaps it's something that I've said or a question that I've asked them, and they've said, "Oh, no one's ever asked me that type of thing before." So how you have your version of an awakening is completely up to you, and there is no one that can dictate how to have an awakening. And I truly believe that that is also our connection with spirituality. So spirituality, coming back onto the path of spirituality, I work with a lot of different cards. I work with tarot cards. I work with oracle cards. I cleanse and clear my space with Palo Santo and sage. I work with essential oils. So essential oils, I use the Young Living brand because I love the company. I love the philosophy. I love how they are so much in their integrity. And they are plant medicines. All of these essence of these plants have a frequency, and they work in with our body. We are all frequency. Okay. And this is not the woo-woo side of things, by the way. This is not, this is not just making things up or things that I've read before. There is science around the fact that we're all frequency. And if you're into, quantum science and quantum physics, you'll start to understand that everything is moving because everything is frequency. There's no such thing as anything being solid or static. And so when we work in with everything that has a frequency, it's going to adjust our frequency as well. And the thing is, when we connect with other people who have a frequency, we're going to connect with their frequency based on what we're letting off. And it's so funny because, we can talk about frequency as vibration. And one of the things I absolutely cannot stand is people that have the mindset of good vibes only or high vibes only, because it's really bypassing the human experience when we just want to have those high vibrational things. All of our thoughts, all of our emotions, all of our ways of being, they all have a frequency that moves through our body, that travels through our body, and that we let out through our auric field as well. And just because we might be experiencing a low vibrational frequency doesn't mean that we're just going to attract bad things. There's so much stigma around this. And I might even do a completely separate episode on this because I feel like it really needs to be something that is spoken into, because there is just so much. It's what we call spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing is where if we choose to do something, think something, or not do something or not think something because we're scared of it, then we're bypassing what it is that we need to go through. Now, this is my belief coming into it now. I truly believe that we have a soul, which is, separate from our body, separate from our mind, that has a soul contract that comes, that is essentially agreed upon, from our higher selves, our souls, before we come to earth. And that we call it a soul contract. And in this soul contract, we have, certain things that we want to experience in our human life before we get to earth, the lessons that we want to learn, the things in which we want to experience, and the people that we want to connect with, and that we have free will as well. So that we come down to earth, we come to earth with human experience amnesia. So we have no recollection of this soul contract or any lives that we've experienced before. And we come in and we have all of these systems that we're born into. So we're put into schools and we're taught how to do things, how to be, what to do, what to wear, what to look like, even the colors that we're supposed to like and the toys that we're meant to play with. All of the things that are dictated by society and governing forces and family and all of the systems. Okay. And so we become quite robotic from such an early age. And so I truly believe that we get to a point in our lives where we do get to start questioning the narratives, starting to question the beliefs and the systems that we've been exposed to, and saying, hang on, I feel as though when I go inwards, I feel as though there's more out there for me. I feel as though I'm supposed to be doing something other than what I'm doing. And I also truly believe that we have our soul mates, so our soul friends, and our soul pods. So, if you've ever met someone or come across someone and you've said to yourself, my gosh, they feel familiar. Perhaps they're a soulmate. Perhaps you've done lifetimes with them before. Now, remembering as well, this is probably going to go a little bit woo-woo, that Earth, that we're like this planet that we've landed on, is the only dimension, so that we're in the third dimension. It's the only one that experiences time. So time doesn't exist when we're not on this earth. So our past lives might not actually be in the dates that we know time as, and our future version of ourselves aren't in alignment with the time that we're experiencing now. So if that hasn't done your head in, stay with me, because if all of these, if we look at the concept of quantum science as well, or quantum physics, it says that every single possibility is playing out all at once. There's infinite possibilities of absolutely everything. And the timeline that we're on now, we can essentially jump timelines and jump into another version of who we are and what we're experiencing. And I'm going to do another episode on quantum and timeline jumping, because I have personally experienced timeline jumping before. And I've got some really cool stories to share about that. So keep your eyes peeled for that upcoming episode as well. So when we come into quantum and we understand that through this human experience, essentially time only exists here. We give time meaning because everything that we need as a human has to have meaning. And I truly believe that spirituality is not something that we can be given the meaning of. We have to make up our minds as to what that meaning is. I believe that that is our sovereign right to be able to give spirituality meaning. So we come to earth and we have these soul contracts and we go through life to learn the lessons. And I truly believe, and I think because I've experienced this before, the lessons are going to keep presenting themselves until we actually learn what it is that we need to learn. And if we don't learn it, then it's going to keep showing up in other ways. And my gosh, I've learned so many lessons along the way, especially in relationships. I feel relationships has been a really big one for me in my life. And I'm in a really, really beautiful, soulful, nourishing, the most unconditionally loving relationship of my life at the moment. And I really feel as though I've unlocked that level essentially. I have decided that I will do an episode with my beautiful partner, Dave. We'd love to share our love story and how it all came about, because it's a pretty cool story. So we'll definitely organize an episode for that. So coming back to my version of what spirituality is, it's the I am, it is statement, and it is my connection to beyond my humanness. And it's interesting because I mentioned earlier in the episode the life that I lived at the start of my life, where I was in, the Catholic Church, and I had so much stuff essentially around the word God and fear. There was so much fear around God. And I remember the vision in my mind that I had of what God looked like was actually the priest from the church when I was like a little kid, from my earliest memory. So I was probably, my earliest memory is 3 years old. It was when I dislocated my elbow. That's pretty much the first memory that I can remember having. And so it would have been around the age of 3 or 4 that I started really properly developing my memory. And when I used to think of God, I used to think it was the priest that was at this church, because that was the connection that I made. Oh, okay, so you go to church and they talk about God, and they talk about it's a he. And okay, so it must be this guy that's up there talking. And so when I decided that I wanted to leave the church and not have anything to do with Catholicism, Christianity, any of that, I had so much funkiness around God. In fact, I didn't use the word God for many, 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 many years, other than saying, oh my God. I really just associated with, universal energy. Then I started having a bit more of a relationship with the word source. So not as in tomato sauce, but the other type of sauce. So the source of all. And I felt comfortable in that, but I still had so much stuff and ickiness around the word God. And even saying it now, when I just go inwards for a moment, I cannot even like fathom the fact that I'm talking about God on a podcast. If you had asked me this, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, would you be recording a podcast episode talking about God? I would have been like, hell freaking no. But here we are, because I've done so much work this year around what my version of God is. And because I had fear around the word God, because I had funkiness, because I had associated with religion and dogma and indoctrination and masculine as well, I had to do my work around it. And it is a work in progress. For me to even say the word on, social media or talking about it in my friend circle, there's still stuff that comes up for me. It still goes, oh, should you really be saying that word? What are people going to think? What if they just think you're a religious nut? Which is so far from it. But if I've got the funky stuff, like, to me, that's shadow. The shadow part is the darkness that I don't want to go into because it's uncomfortable. And I know, as a professional shadow diver, essentially, that if I go into it, I will find the reasons why I feel this way, why I believe what I believe, and then I can change the belief system. And I can let the light in, because what we know to be true is that when we shine light on darkness, if we shine a torch on a shadow, then, the darkness dissipates. So I know that by letting in light, which is just purely awareness, bringing in awareness that I have this darkness energy to me, then I can move through it. And so it runs really deep with the word God. I'm not going to lie. And it's an ongoing process for me. And so when I think of God as a masculine, I start to contract. Yet when I think as God as a feminine, I start to think, oh, actually, well, that makes sense to me. Because if we say that, God was the creator, and it is a woman that creates, it's the feminine that actually is the creator of life. I mean, I've given birth and I'm female, and I only know females that give birth. So when I think about it from a feminine perspective, I actually really soften. And then I take my mind to, well, what if it's not masculine? What if it's feminine? What if it's both or none of it? And that's the center point. That's the I am, it is. And so that's been really, really helpful for me as I move through this shadow work of, accepting the word God. And yes, I still believe in universal energy, but I also believe that there is a somehow a creator of all. I don't have any of the answers as to why or how or any of that. In fact, I've kind of been diving into it recently. I've been watching a few little things on TikTok. I find TikTok fascinating, by the way. So, little side note, I feel as though TikTok is probably one of the only platforms, other than maybe YouTube, that's like kind of quite mainstream, that's really not censored, and there's actually so much in there. And I find myself, I guess it's the algorithm, like once I'm starting to watch certain things, it's going to show me more of those things. But I find that there is so much interesting perspectives of people on there. I actually really, really enjoy TikTok for that side of things. I also was the person that said I would never, ever, ever download TikTok, but here we are. So one of the things I've been sort of interested in lately is, are we living in a simulation? Is it like a game? Is it like the Matrix? And it's interesting because all of the stuff that I'm seeing around it actually makes a lot of sense. And I was thinking to myself the other day, I'm like, if we're in a simulation and essentially we've cracked the code as to what's going on in this lifetime, I'm like, oh, that's kind of disappointing. Like, if it's just a simulation, that doesn't sound fun. Like, that doesn't sound cool. And it's interesting because one of the things that I heard on this video is that, and it just resonates so deeply, that the speed of light, which is obviously the fastest speed that we know, is actually how fast the operating system can take us. And the reason that we haven't been able to explore too far past our own planet, or we starting to see things more like we've got the Hubble telescope, and we've got rovers on Mars and all sorts of things, but that's the computer simulation loading the next level. We just can't see it yet because it's not built yet. Now, this shit totally blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, could that actually be true? And then I'm like, but that just feels so funky. Like, that doesn't feel very soulful. If we're in a computer simulation, if it's similar to the Matrix, what's the point then? I mean, we could do a whole episode on what is the point of life. And I felt some funk around it, and I'm still sort of trying to make up my mind about it. I'm still like, okay, so is it a simulation? Is it something beyond that? Are we souls in a human body? And yes, we've come down to earth and it is a simulation. Is it all a dream? I remember seeing a meme one time that said, "Oh, imagine that you have just that you wake up and that your whole life flashes in front of you, and you just realize that you just ripped the biggest bong, and that was your whole life experience. And then you wake up and other people are around you in a room having the same experience." I'm like, oh my gosh, no, don't do that to my head. So I think the thing is about the human experience and our human minds is that we're always looking for reasoning. We're always looking for answers. We're always in search of that. And we love to have answers about things. We really don't love hanging out in the unknown for too long because it actually feels unsafe in our body. And we're here as humans literally to be safe and to survive, because if we don't survive, we're dead, and we do anything to preserve our survival. And so one of the things that we like to have is answers, and a lot of them, not only to be right, but to preserve that safety as well. And so then last night, actually, I was watching the Disney movie called Soul with my kids. And I've had so many people tell me before, you need to watch Soul, you need to watch Soul. And I was like, yeah, I'll get around to it. So I finally got around to it last night. If you haven't seen it, please go and watch it. It's on the Disney Channel, on the Disney app. And it is fascinating. It's the closest mainstream thing that I've seen that actually gives insight on what it's like to have a purpose to this human experience, to have a spark, and what it is that gets you into that flow state. It essentially talks about having spirit guides. They call them I think it's mentors or something like that. It is such a beautiful movie. And it also shows essentially what our souls look like when we don't have purpose or we've lost our spark. And I truly believe that it is the way in which we embody spirituality that we discover who we are and essentially why we're here on this planet, why we're doing life. It's the way in which we choose to give meaning. And as I said at the start of the episode, I truly believe that everyone is entitled to have their own perspective on this. So someone who, might be an incredible sports person or athletic, they might get into flow. Their life purpose might be to run marathons because that's where they feel the most alive or the most connected to their version of God or their version of their higher self or their version of nature, whatever you want to call it. Or, perhaps it's someone that creates music. To me, I truly believe that music is a consciousness. And that might be a little deep, but I truly believe that. I mean, music is frequency, everything is frequency. And I believe it can speak to us on a soul level, and that it is a consciousness that works in with us, that it can take us to places that we haven't gone before. If you've ever worked with plant medicine in ceremony, then you'll understand how important the music is. I have been to, festivals, to dance concerts, to all sorts of things, like clubs, even nightclubs, and the music just has this way of transporting you somewhere. You might know the feeling of putting on, your favorite song and being like, oh my God, yes, like my soul just needed this. Or you might hear a song that your soul is just absolutely repulsed and repelled by, and you're like, turn it off. I can't listen to this right now. So I truly believe that music it's a consciousness. It has its own awareness and it works in with us. And there are people that come onto this beautiful planet Earth that literally it is their soul mission to create this music. And that there are people that have created radios, and there's people that have created these apps like Spotify and these music channels in which we can listen to this music, and the people that made headphones that can put the music straight into our ears, and the people that made speakers. Like, all of these people came to earth with this mission for ultimately what I believe is a greater good. And so one of the things that I learned about this movie last night, and I really feel like I'm going through an integration period having watched this movie. I'm like, wow, like there was so much in it. I'm like checking in with myself because I know my purpose. I know what lights me up. And I'm checking in with myself again today saying, am I really living in alignment with my spark? What am I constantly doing the things that light me up? And if I'm not, why? What am I believing that I have to be doing in this life that may or not even be true, but it's a belief system, it's an indoctrination, it's a byproduct of the system that says that we have to be doing this and we have to be doing that. And so that movie has really, really landed for me. So honestly, if you haven't seen it, please go and watch it. My kids are 8 and 6. My 8-year-old kind of understood it. My 6-year-old did get a little bit upset at one point, which I won't give too much away, but it was when people were disconnected from their souls. He sort of took that on board. I don't think he really understood what it meant, but there was just sort of some darker scenes which upset him a little bit. But I really believe that it's great for children to see, to just start, this new wave of generation that are coming through that really need to connect from an earlier age with themselves, with a greater force, or with God or the universe, or whatever it is that you want to call it. And so really starting to sum up now, like what spirituality is that it is your decision of what it is. It is completely up to you. If there is someone out there that says you were doing spirituality wrong or you were doing spirituality right, then run a million miles, because there is no right and wrong. There is no dark and light. There is no polarity in spirituality when you come to that center point. However you get there is your choice. That is completely up to you. That is your version of the world. If it's connecting just purely with yourself, if it's connecting with the things that are completely beyond our comprehension, if it's connecting with God or Allah or Buddha or whoever it is that you look up to, that's your version and that's perfect for you. And so this is why I said at the start of the episode, it's such a loaded question, because everybody has got a different perspective, and you can cherry pick from what I've said today. You can definitely take pieces that I have mentioned today and go, yeah, actually, I really agree with what Jen says. Or you can say, I strongly disagree with what Jen says. You get to make up your mind about it yourself, though. And that's what I really invite you to do. So if there's anything that you take away from the episode today, is to connect with what is your version of spirituality. What does it even mean to you? It's not what Google says. It's not what I say. It's not what your mum says. It's not what the church says. It's not what the government says. It's not what anybody else says. It's what you say it is and how you connect with it. And then asking yourself, is there any practices that you want to either implement or come back to that you may have done previously to get you into that space of connection, to get you into alignment with the divine or yourself or nature or whatever that is for you? For me personally, like I said, I love sitting with cacao. I love using crystals. I love working with different plant medicines. I like journaling. Journaling is such a beautiful way to just write down the thoughts about what is real for you. I like sitting out in nature and, listening to the rain, or honestly, hugging a tree is such a beautiful practice. I know that probably sounds really woo-woo, but for me personally, my connection with nature is it's an opening for me to connect with my spirituality. It's when I sit in sacred space with my girlfriends or my friends and we just connect without our phones, without talking about work stuff, when we just talk about what is on our heart or what is coming through our soul. For me, it's also in that beautiful space where I'm making love with my partner, where nothing else in the world matters. We are just there in our own little universe, just looking into each other's eyes, connecting physically, connecting on a soul level, remembering each other, remembering that we have done lifetimes together before, and how blessed we are to have found each other again in this lifetime and be on this journey of life together. And through that beautiful, beautiful space where we get to orgasm, it is that heightened sense of awareness that, that's why personally, that's why I think I scream, oh my God, is because I'm connected so deeply to the divine. It's one of the ways in which I can tap into that space in such a beautiful way, is because I can connect with my partner on such a deep level that I can't experience, on every single day walking around. Look, if I could walk around experiencing orgasm 24/7, I absolutely would not complain. I'm sure one day we'll figure out how to do that, but until then, we'll just keep it for those sacred lovemaking times. So I want to leave you with a little recap. So just checking in with your version of spirituality. What does spirituality mean to you? How can you deepen that connection if you choose to? And what are some of the tools that you find support you to help you connect? Now, it's not my version, it's your version. What are the things? So it's purely just checking in with yourself to see what that is. You might like to journal around it. Feel free to reach out to me and share with it. I'd love to share that. If you'd like me to share it on the show, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can do that via Instagram, via email, or directly through the app, through the comments. But I want to send you so much love. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. It was probably the first sort of out there and woo-woo one. And trust me, there is plenty more to come. And I will see you in the next episode. Take care. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I hope you love the Enlightened podcast, and the biggest compliment you can give me is subscribing to this podcast, sharing it, and leaving a rating and review. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. My handle is @JenHamiltonOfficial, and the podcast handle is enlightened_podcast. You can also find the video version on YouTube on my channel. Just search Enlightened and don't forget to hit subscribe. Have a beautiful day and enjoy living the enlightened journey of life.